So tonight, Friday Night SmackDown on Fox sees a ginormous main event as the Universal Championship is on the line, but there's an added stipulation as Roman Reigns is defending the Universal Championship against Daniel Bryan, but if Daniel Bryan loses tonight, he will leave Friday Night SmackDown. So it's certainly going to be very, 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 very big, and it's got a lot of ramifications. Actually, is technically right. It's a Fastlane rematch, and look, their match at Fastlane. Talk about an awesome match. I mean, these guys have real strong chemistry. And if it's given time, this could be something really special. Now, obviously, the main event of WrestleMania 37 Night 2 was Roman Reigns versus Daniel Bryan versus Edge. I think for me, that was probably the match of the entire WrestleMania 37 weekend. I think it really was. It saved Night 2. It absolutely saved Night 2. Night 2 of WrestleMania 37 was not good. And I think we can say that safely now in retrospect because, you sort of in the moment, you look at things and maybe you can be a bit harsh or you can praise things too much, whatever. Looking back on it, obviously Night 1 was far superior to Night 2. But if it wasn't for that main event of Night 2, then that second day would have been a dud, a real bad dud. It was not good. But that main event was so good that it was the best match of WrestleMania 37 weekend. So I'm excited for tonight on SmackDown. But let's be honest, the interesting thing here when it comes to this Universal Championship match tonight on SmackDown is Daniel Bryan's going to be leaving SmackDown, right? That's how this one's going to have to work because there is absolutely no way or no realm of possibility, in my opinion, that Roman Reigns loses tonight. He won't. He won't. The guy, since he returned in at SummerSlam 2020 last year, after that Fiend and Braun Strowman main event for the Universal Championship, since he returned then, Roman Reigns hasn't lost. He hasn't pinned. I know technically he submitted at Fastlane. That's the stakes in this one. That's the element of doubt in the fans' mind when you're thinking about this match. But since he returned, Roman Reigns hasn't lost. And if Roman Reigns was going to drop the Universal Championship at any point, he would have dropped it at WrestleMania. Why? Because it's the grandest stage of them all. It's the biggest show of the year. It was the first time that fans have been there for 1 month, 1 year, 1 month, 1 day. All that kind of stuff, technically 2 days, I guess, whatever. But the whole point is that if Roman Reigns was going to drop the Universal Championship, it would have been then. It would have been at WrestleMania 37 Night 2. He didn't. He won. He won strong. He not only pinned Daniel Bryan, he pinned Edge too at the same time. It was meant for him to continue his dominance on SmackDown as the Universal Champion. So if he was going to drop the title, he would have dropped it then. They're booking him to be incredibly strong. I don't even know if they know when Roman Reigns is going to drop the Universal Championship. He might not drop it until next year's WrestleMania. I pitched that at the time. And to be honest, there's a real possibility that could happen. So the point being is then they're not going to have Roman Reigns drop the Universal Championship on a random episode of SmackDown. They're just not. So that means Daniel Bryan is leaving SmackDown. Now, obviously, it doesn't mean he's leaving WWE. We're going to get into his contract situation because it is interesting. And obviously, he's spoken a lot about his contractual situation with WWE, his desires about what he wants to do next in his career, if that career is going to be coming to an end, all that kind of stuff. So don't worry, we'll talk about that. So for me, I think that obviously the outcome here is that Roman Reigns wins. Roman Reigns is going to win, and Daniel Bryan is going to, at the very least, go on hiatus from SmackDown. Is he going to go to Raw? What's he going to do? I don't know. We can touch on that in a second. And obviously, what they're building towards at WrestleMania Backlash is that Roman Reigns is going to defend the Universal Championship against Cesaro. That's what's being teased. That's what's been teased since the post-WrestleMania edition of SmackDown, and that's the route that they're going in. So again, because Reigns is going to be facing Cesaro at WrestleMania Backlash, it tells you here that he's going to retain and he's going to defeat Daniel Bryan. The only thing predictable about this is the result. We know what the result is going to be. The result is going to be Roman Reigns retains the Universal Championship. Now, if he doesn't, obviously it will be one of the biggest shocks because I'd be so surprised that they would do that after all this time they have spent building Roman Reigns and building this heel version of Reigns and being undefeatable and being the tribal chief, being the head of the table, being acknowledged and all that good stuff, right? All the catchphrases that he's had. Why they would just have Daniel Bryan beating him on a random episode of SmackDown, I really don't know. So the stakes are there. Obviously, the stakes are massive considering it's the Universal Championship match. And if Daniel Bryan loses, he's leaving SmackDown. It means he's leaving SmackDown. Now, what's interesting about this, and I think really this is what's got a lot of people talking here, is that this could be the end of Daniel Bryan in WWE in general as an active performer. This could be the end of Daniel Bryan as a full-time superstar. He's been very vocal for a while now, really ever since he came back to WWE television last year after he had a little bit of break in the summer. When he came back last year, he basically said, this is my last run, basically, as a full-time WWE superstar. Once my contract expires next year, I don't really know what I'm going to do. And he's been speaking about this. He did a lot of media, obviously being involved in the WrestleMania main event for Night 2, and arguably the overall WrestleMania main event of that two-day show. He did a lot of media, and he spoke to a lot of people. And the greatest thing about Daniel Bryan is whenever he does media or interviews, he is unbelievably honest. He doesn't care about getting in trouble with WWE. He's bulletproof at this point. And he spoke about, with several outlets, that he thinks he's coming to an end as an active in-ring performer, or certainly a full-time one. Now, he revealed during an interview with BT Sport that his contract is expiring with WWE, quote, relatively soon. Now, relatively soon means probably the fall of this year. He signed a 3-year deal with WWE in 2018 in the fall of that year. That's obviously when he had the WWE Championship reign and the Planet's Champion and that just amazing run with the hemp title and all that kind of stuff. He signed a 3-year deal then. So his contract expires in the fall of this year. So around maybe September time of this year. So still a few months. Obviously we're coming into May. So probably about 3 or 4 months time probably. He, anyway, revealed to BT Sport that his contract with WWE is expiring relatively soon, and he's still trying to figure out what he wants to do after his contract expires. This is what he said to BT Sport, quote, "My contract's actually up relatively soon, so I don't know. I'm still trying to figure out what I'm doing with my life. I'm going to be 40 soon." He also said that he enjoys spending time, of course, with his 2 children, and he has started drinking coffee because he's so tired after he returns from the television tapings. Now, Bryan's comments follow him revealing that he felt detached from his WrestleMania 37 main event match against Edge and Roman Reigns, and believes it may be a sign that his time as a full-time wrestler are over. Now, the former WWE champion has been contemplating going part-time for the last year and has previously said in interviews that he will be a full-time dad, part-time wrestler after his contract is up. So given his comments, given what he's been saying a lot, and we've got some more comments about this that I'll touch on in a second, given his comments about, I felt a bit detached from the WrestleMania main event. If you're in the main event of WrestleMania and you're, not that he was struggling to get himself, hyped up for it, because I don't think he was, but if Daniel Bryan always has been about for the passion and love of professional wrestling, right? His story is about that. Even when he was told he couldn't wrestle anymore by WWE, part of the reason he got cleared in the end is because he said, look, my contract's going to expire with you guys. Once my contract expires, I know for a fact, because I've spoken to doctors who have cleared me, I'm going to go wrestle because that's what I love to do. And I don't care if it's in front of 20,000 people, 20 people, or 0 people on the independent scene. I'll do it because that's what I love to do. And the fact that he's saying at this point, I was in the main event of WrestleMania, and not that he didn't care, but he felt slightly detached, that's a really big deal for him. A really, really big deal for him. So maybe that's him saying, you know what? Maybe that desire just isn't there, and if it's not there, I don't want to be taking up a spot, or I don't want to be in a position where someone else could be. And Daniel Bryan, look, to be honest, he was in the main event of WrestleMania, but he's on the creative team for SmackDown. He helps contribute to that show, and he's been all about putting over younger guys or elevating younger guys and all that kind of stuff. So he cares. He cares about the business, and he cares about the passion for it. And if he's not got that passion for it, then maybe he's just said, you know what? Maybe I'm done. And I think back to the Mick Foley story. The Mick Foley story of WrestleMania 2000. Mick Foley in 2000, he needed to retire. He was having a lot of problems with concussions, and his body was breaking down. He had bad backs, bad knees. Well, what on Mick Foley is not bad. So he was injured and he was hurt, and he said, you know what? I think I'm done. I've got to retire. I can't do this anymore. So he had the retirement match against Triple H at No Way Out in 2000. Hell in a Cell match, unbelievable match. And then he retires. And then Vince McMahon says to him, look, you never had that WrestleMania moment. You never had the WrestleMania main event. He was meant to be part of the WrestleMania main event the year prior at WrestleMania 15, and it didn't happen, didn't work out. And basically, Vince McMahon said to him, look, come back, have your WrestleMania moment, have your WrestleMania main event. And Mick Foley was the first eliminated, but he had that WrestleMania main event. He could tick that off on his list. Maybe it's a similar case of Daniel Bryan. Maybe Daniel Bryan said to Vince McMahon or those in WWE last year, look, my contract's coming up next year. I don't want to do this full time anymore. And I also don't want to be one of those guys that's holding people down or taking up a spot or taking up positions. I don't think that's fair. I love the business too much. And maybe Vince McMahon said, look, come back, one more run, WrestleMania main event. We want you in there. And maybe that's the case. Maybe they wanted to give Daniel Bryan that one big WrestleMania moment, that one last WrestleMania moment for what he's contributed to WWE and what a talent he's been to WWE. It all starts to make a bit of sense. It does all start to make a little bit of sense. And all of these comments are starting to add up. They really are. Now, as I mentioned, there's been some more comments because he did a ton of media around WrestleMania 37. Now, Daniel Bryan took part in a WrestleMania 37 meet and greet during WrestleMania week, and he talked about his contractual situation with WWE. This was transcribed by Fightful, so thank you for the quote to Fightful. He said, quote, "My contract is up soon. We need to figure out what a good balance between home life and wrestling is. I never want to stop wrestling. I love it. It's just figuring that out." Now, Bryan has repeatedly mentioned his contractual status in the past year and has hinted that his career as a full-time wrestler is winding down, desiring to spend more time at home with his 2 children. But Bryan didn't stop there, indicating that he's interested in pursuing wrestling options both within WWE and outside of it. He said, quote, "It'd be interesting if I could wrestle in different companies and WWE. That's actually something I'm trying to weasel my way into right now." Now, in an interview in March, Bryan expressed an interest in wrestling Ring of Honor Pure Champion Jonathan Gresham and AEW star Jungle Boy, who of course headlined Dynamite recently in a losing effort against Darby Allin. For years, Bryan has also mentioned wrestling in Mexico, where he hoped to work the promotion's WrestleMania-style anniversary show against the legendary Blue Panther. Bryan, obviously, as I mentioned, his contract expires in the fall of this year. That is interesting. Now, he mentioned that he's trying to work out a situation where he can wrestle for both WWE and other companies. I would be flabbergasted if that happened. And I did a video, it actually just dropped an hour ago, talking about WWE in discussions with MLW and them wanting to work with other companies to give the impression that they're willing to work with other companies. Who's to say that they don't try and do a storyline where Daniel Bryan loses tonight on SmackDown? This is a possibility. It's a reach. Don't get me wrong, it's a reach, but it's a possibility. We could see a scenario tonight on SmackDown. Roman Reigns wins. That's happening. But Roman Reigns wins and Daniel Bryan, he has to leave SmackDown. Daniel Bryan, as I mentioned, is still under contract to WWE for, I think, about 3 months or so, 3-4 months, until the fall of this year. Who's to say Daniel Bryan then doesn't do appearances for, I don't know, an MLW, if they're talking to MLW, for an Impact Wrestling, a Ring of Honor, someone like that? Who's to say he doesn't whilst he's under contract to give the impression that he's working the indies again? That's not out of the realm of possibility. It's not impossible. I would be very, very surprised if that is the case. I don't know. I really don't know. But that would be fun. What a story that would be. That would be an incredible story. Are you kidding me? He goes and does these appearances for Ring of Honor or MLW. It would have so much buzz, and then eventually comes back and faces off against Roman Reigns one last time at, say, a SummerSlam or something like that. That's a story. That's a really, really interesting story. My reaction to that would be, though, that that's just not a story that WWE would do. That is not a story that WWE do, because historically they just haven't done stuff like that. So I don't know. But that would be interesting. That would be really interesting to see if WWE would go down that route. I don't know if they would, though. I really don't know, and I just can't. I can't necessarily see that they would go down that situation. I think a more likely scenario is that, again, Bryan's contract expires in a few months' time. Maybe WWE is writing him off of television for now, in the sense that we'll spend the next few months trying to figure something out and trying to figure out what that is. Daniel Bryan said in that interview there that he doesn't necessarily want to stop wrestling. He just doesn't feel that he can do it full time anymore. And it's not as if he's an old guy. He's nearly 40, which in pro wrestling terms is nothing. But of course, Daniel Bryan has been on the scene for a long, long time, and that physical style that Daniel Bryan worked for several years on the independent scene and for the likes of Ring of Honor did catch up to him pretty fast, especially a few years ago. It was one of the reasons, of course, he had the neck trouble and then obviously the concussions and all that kind of stuff. It caught up to him. And just so saying that Daniel Bryan is 40 and he's 40, he should be able to carry on for years and years. There's certainly mileage on the clock when it comes to Daniel Bryan. So it's a really confusing one. I think the only thing that's for sure and given about tonight's episode of SmackDown is that Roman Reigns is retaining. There's no doubt in my mind that Roman Reigns is retaining the Universal Championship tonight. That's a given. What isn't a given is what's going to happen with Daniel Bryan going forward. And I think there's certainly lots of different avenues to explore there. One being that this is the last of Daniel Bryan as a full-time superstar. He's written off of television. They try and figure out a new deal. If they can't, Daniel Bryan goes, and then he maybe goes to an AEW, or he does do an occasional shot with Ring of Honor, or he works in Mexico, whatever. But it's on his own terms. He doesn't have to wrestle all the time. It's a part-time situation. He's happy with doing that. He can spend time at home. That's a real possibility. That is a possibility. Another possibility is that Reigns wins tonight. Daniel Bryan's written off television, and then he goes to work with other companies on the independent scene, whether that is Ring of Honor, Impact, whoever. He does these select dates, but he's still under contract with WWE and he signs a new deal. Another being that he loses tonight. He's written off television, works out a new deal with WWE. He comes back as a part-time talent. What a part-time talent looks like, I don't know. I can't imagine Daniel Bryan would want to be... I don't want to be a Goldberg, but you know what I mean? I don't think Daniel Bryan would want to be... like a Goldberg, like a Brock Lesnar, and that I'm only going to show up certain dates of the year. I think Daniel Bryan would probably want to be like maybe like a Shawn Michaels or an Undertaker, that kind of thing, where he might probably show up to most television tapings throughout the year, but there might be a 3-month period where he's off after WrestleMania or something like that. Shawn Michaels had this kind of situation, and the Undertaker kind of had it too, whereby they would wrestle WrestleMania, and then they would be off probably around to like SummerSlam or something like that. So not loads of time, but like maybe 3-4 months they would be off. Then they would be on television and do the television tapings, not really live events, maybe an occasional European tour or something like that, but they would do television tapings from SummerSlam to WrestleMania once again. Then they would have the 3 months off. I can imagine Daniel Bryan wanting to do something like that. And I think that is a possibility as well. And I think that's what this whole process is. I think Daniel Bryan and WWE are trying to figure that out. So there's certainly a lot on the table here. There certainly is a lot on the table. Again, the obvious thing here is that Roman Reigns is retaining. There is no outcome that I can see that Roman Reigns doesn't leave the ThunderDome tonight, doesn't leave Friday Night SmackDown as the Universal Champion. I think Reigns wins. I think there could be a situation where not only does Reigns win, but then after the match, we saw him hit a concerto at WrestleMania. Who's to say he doesn't do a similar thing here? Hits Daniel Bryan with a concerto. Not only does Daniel Bryan leave SmackDown, but he's written off television through an injury while they figure out this contractual stuff. Cesaro comes down, attacks Roman Reigns, sets up the match at WrestleMania Backlash. I think that's the direction that they're going in anyway. So that's probably the most likely scenario. When it comes to Daniel Bryan and his future, like I said, that is really unwritten. Daniel Bryan doesn't really know the situation right now when it comes to his status of what he's going to be doing for SmackDown going forward or for WWE going forward. And to be honest, I don't know. And again, I don't think Daniel Bryan knows. I know I mentioned the whole, will he wrestle for other promotions while still being under contract to WWE? As I mentioned at the time earlier on, if they could pull that off, if Daniel Bryan could pull that off and if WWE allowed him to do that, it'd be a huge storyline. It would be a massive, massive storyline, and loads of people would be talking about it, and maybe it's exactly what WWE needs right now, because the shows are very bland. I still think SmackDown's good, especially in comparison to Raw. Raw's just awful, awful, awful program. But it would certainly get a lot of buzz and people would be talking about it. I just don't see WWE doing that because historically they haven't. But who's to say? Like I said, prediction is Reigns will retain tonight. Daniel Bryan will be written off for television somehow, some way. It's just a case of if he ever comes back or not. It's certainly going to be interesting, and we could be seeing the final time of Daniel Bryan being a full-time WWE superstar tonight. Certainly interesting. But of course, as always, this is just one man's opinion. What are your thoughts on Roman Reigns versus Daniel Bryan tonight, live on Friday Night SmackDown on Fox for the Universal Championship? If Daniel Bryan loses, he leaves Friday Night SmackDown. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I'll do my best to respond and reply to all of your comments. Really enjoy interacting with you guys, talking about WWE, AEW, Impact Wrestling, New Japan Pro Wrestling, all things pro wrestling here on the channel. So be sure to get involved in the community, drop a comment below. All opinions are welcome. If you have enjoyed this video, please do smash a like on the like button too. Really does help us out here on YouTube, get the rankings and get into people's recommendation feeds if they haven't seen our videos previously. But most importantly, if you haven't already, please do subscribe to Wrestle News 365. You can do that by clicking the bottom right hand corner of the screen right now. Or if you wait a few seconds, there'll be a subscribe button at the end of this video, along with another video for you to watch. Thank you very much for watching, listening, streaming, or have you come across this video today, and I'll speak to you again very, very soon. Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.